order. Um, Thank you. And I've been part of this group for the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see all the familiar faces and the new faces. Again, Priscilla Clausen, I work for Valor, which as a program coordinator, and Valor is California's Anti-Sexual Violence Coalition. So what that means is we provide technical assistance and training to all of the rape crisis centers within California. We also have a national presence. We trade hosting duties for the National Sexual Assault Conference every other year. So we host on, right now we're hosting on odd years. So in August, we'll be hosting the National Sexual Assault Conference. And the project that I'm here to talk about today is our CA Leads project. And that is California Advocates Leading in Engagement, Accessibility, and Developmental Disability Services. And that is a project that we have with the ARC of California. And the ARC of California, which some of you may be familiar with, I know a lot of you are familiar with the ARC as a service provider, but the ARC of California is kind of the overarching organization that helps host these meetings, but also has a large influence on policy in the state of California and some influence on the local chapters over like trainings and provides supports and services to them in that way as well. We're very similar in that we have very little control over our rape crisis centers and what they must do, but we can provide them with training that they can kind of take or leave. And that's kind of how the ARC works too, is they can say, hey, we have this thing for you, please implement it, but we can't say you have to do this, right? So we're very similar organizations in that way. And we also, Valor as an organization does a lot of policy work as well. So for our project, the CA Leads project, it started in 2019 and it is under the Office on Violence Against Women, a grant that is a disability grant. And that grant exists specifically to address the intersections of disability and violence. So it can be domestic violence, sexual violence, or a combination of both. And then specifically developmental disabilities, blindness, deafness, traumatic brain injuries. So for our collaboration, we focus on the intersection of specifically sexual violence and specifically intellectual and developmental disabilities. But there are other collaborations across the country that work with different intersections. So our project, the way that it exists is that the initial 3-year grant is a very regimented period where we do very specific activities to create our collaboration, to do research about all of the ways in which the two different organizations work, how they can come together, what their agreements are going to be. And we also do research on the survivors in our state. So as part of that research, we interviewed survivors, we interviewed people with disabilities, we interviewed survivors with disabilities, we interviewed everybody at the ARC of California, everybody at Valor, we interviewed DSPs, we interviewed program directors at day programs, volunteers at rape crisis centers. We basically did a series of interviews with anyone that we could think of that might be involved in supports and services for survivors with disabilities to find out what needs to happen, what is happening, what isn't happening. And one of the outcomes of these research groups were a series of trainings. So I'm going to drop this in the chat. This is our website on this is our page on Valor's website. So on this page, this is where you can find all of the resources that we've created and all the web conferences that we've hosted. Our web conferences right now consist of, let's see, 2 trainings for disability service providers. So it doesn't have to necessarily be like direct support DSPs, right? but just anybody who works for like a disability support agency. And then 2 trainings for people who work at rape crisis centers. And they really focus on informing each about the other. So the ARC came and did a training for rape crisis centers talking about the landscape of services and developmental disabilities in California, right? Because we know California is very different than any other state, and what the regional center looks like and what qualifies someone to be a regional center client. And then we went and did a series of 2 trainings for disability service providers as rape crisis experts. And we talk to them about what trauma looks like and how to support survivors with disabilities and the ways that sexual violence can impact someone with disabilities. So this was our first set of trainings. And right now we just announced, since, as you can see, SAM, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, is April. So this month we're doing a training for disability service providers about trauma-informed mandated reporting. So I'll put the link for that in the chat as well. So you can feel free to share this with anyone that you think may benefit from it. If you want to email me, I can send you our official invite that's a little more attractive rather than just sending a link, but you can send a link as well, whatever works for you. So this is the training that we're promoting right now. It's reporting and supporting approaching mandated reporting with care. So that is next week, and it's really walking folks through the process of including survivors in the reporting process. Because what we probably all have seen as disability service providers or APS, right, is that it happens very frequently that service providers do their due diligence, right? They report anytime they have the suspicion or a disclosure, but they don't follow up with the survivor or even include the survivor in the process of reporting. So oftentimes we'll see that the survivor is completely caught unaware that it's been reported. And they get a call from Adult Protective Services saying, hey, I heard you were assaulted, right? Or something like that. Something possibly, you know, more formal. But that's essentially what happens is like they maybe disclose this to someone and then they have no knowledge that that person has reported. They may not even know that person is a mandated reporter. So all that they know is that, well, someone has broken my trust, right? And so what we are, as a collaborative, have come up with is best practices for mandated reporting that includes the survivor. So making sure that you're informing that survivor early and often that you are a mandated reporter, who around them is mandated reporters, what that means, what that looks like. And then the training that we have here will take those basics and really like walk you through that process of what that means. You know, so telling a survivor, I'm going to have to report this. Who do I report it to? What do I say? Do you want to be involved in the process? Do you want to sit with me while I make this phone call to APS? Do you want to read the report that I'm writing to APS? Do you want me to read it to you? Are there people who I can connect you with within your support circle, right? That you want to share this information with, who can help you through this process, right? So all those steps of things that, like, when you're doing your due diligence and you're just checking those boxes, you're like, yeah, I called APS, check. Yeah, I mailed my report, check. Okay, I'm done. Or, you know, then I did my SIR. So I guess I'm finished. But you're not doing the thing that mandated report is intended, and that's to help people, right? Because we know that that's the intention of mandated reporting. It's there to make sure that people are receiving the supports and services that they need. And mandated reporting doesn't necessarily make sure that that happens, right? It follows up and tries to remove a person from a dangerous situation, but we know that that's not always what's going to happen. That person may stay in that situation. They may choose to stay there. They may end up somewhere that's even more dangerous. We know that the intention of mandated reporting is to keep people safe and to provide them with help. But the realities of mandated reporting aren't always that. We need to take extra steps to make sure that we are supporting this person and making sure that we're not causing further harm through reporting. So that's really what this next session is about. The ARC of California also sent out recently in their Monday morning memo a highlight about Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And in that highlight, it also features some of the resources that we've created along with the web conferences. And one of the resources that we recently released is a guide to connecting with different resources within California. So it's separated by audience kind of. So there's a section that's a plain language section specifically for people with disabilities. So there's sections in there on a mandated reporting guide. So it's a plain language guide about what mandated reporting is for people with developmental disabilities. So this is something that can be available at day programs. It can be available at an annual meeting. You can have them laying around. You can give them to someone at the initial onset of your work with them. And it helps them kind of understand like what it means. It's basically like the who, what, when, where, and why of mandated reporting. So that's something you can print out. It's in the resource guide. It's also available in Spanish. We also have best practices, which is what our web conference basically is like the breakdown of the best practices in written format for mandated reporting. We have, let's see. I haven't posted it yet, but we just released a brochure that we went through with our client advisory team. So it's like self-advocates who weighed in on what we should be including. And it's an outreach brochure intended for direct communication with folks with developmental disabilities, because one of the things that folks also shared with us is that they're scared of mandated reporting, right? So maybe they know everyone in their life is a mandated reporter and they don't want to tell them because they know that they may have some outcomes that aren't what they want, and that things might be out of their control if they tell a mandated reporter what's happening. So the outreach brochure that we created is basically separated into what sexual violence is and then what your rights are. And then on the back of the guide, it has a place that you can customize your local rape crisis center so that survivors with developmental disabilities can connect directly with their local rape crisis center rather than having to go through like their regional center counselor or their day program staff in order to make that connection. So this is something that we kind of intend to be in the community. Rape crisis centers can put them in places like bowling alleys, grocery stores, doctor's offices, places that people may frequent, libraries, where they can get this information, mull it over, maybe even use it as like an opening talking point with someone if they're wanting more information, but to give them access to a place that can help them understand their options without reporting influencing their decisions. So it can help them understand, like, yeah, if you want someone to help you with this process, we can help you with it, but you can also talk to these other people in your life as well who may have more impact on like mandated reporting. So we don't want to bypass mandated reporting because it's important, but we do want to give people the option to go somewhere that mandated reporting isn't the status quo so that they have access to those supports and services without having to worry about, you know, who they disclose to. So I think that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions? I know that was kind of all over the place.
What do you guys think the biggest thing you've learned while doing the grant over that like couple year period from the different people you interviewed or worked with, just kind of your findings from that.
Yeah, so in working with survivors just in general, the main thing that we learn um, as advocates is that people don't lie about sexual violence, and that like our main job as advocates is to believe someone, right? So that's like kind of our bottom line whenever someone goes into training for rape crisis centers is like your first job is to believe someone. And when working with survivors with developmental disabilities, we found like the same things that we find in other populations is that the reason people don't report is because they think people won't believe them. So you see on the news, right, that like anytime someone reports a sexual assault, there's always people who are like, no, they're doing it for attention. They're doing it for this, that, they want money. Um, and that holds true for people with developmental disabilities as well, right? They're the same as everyone else in that they oftentimes aren't believed. And that is also carries through because of what the understanding of people with developmental disabilities and their comprehension levels are. So people who work as DSPs will say like, oh, well, they don't even understand like what rape is. So, like they're just using this word that they've heard. They don't really know what it means. Or they're confused. They're remembering the time they were assaulted in the past and they think that it's happening now. So really those ways that people's disability is actually used against them to reinforce some of the things that we already know is true about survivors. And that's they're not going to say anything because they think people won't believe them, right? And that's true across the board. So I think that's really been one of the main things that kind of struck me as like how common people's fears are and how true they are.
Hmm. I'm actually really interested in the plain language piece of it. And really, I've been probably in business too long because I've kind of forgotten how to use plain language. We use acronyms and we, expect everybody to know the names of the services and resources. So can you talk a little bit more about the plain language in your brochure and how you went about developing that, or kind of what words triggered that need for plain language?
Yeah, totally. So it's something that strikes us in the anti-sexual violence world too. We love our acronyms, right? And we'll get like a new employee and they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's like realizing that plain language, some people view it as kind of like offensive, right? Like we lots of people go to college and it's like you learn how to elevate your language to this status that makes you sound like you belong here and like you fit in here. But realizing that if that's what you're doing, you are excluding people, right? That like if you're trying to get yourself up to this level, you're in this tiny part of the pyramid and then you're excluding people from your conversations. It's not just like I'm making myself sound like I belong, I'm making myself sound like you don't belong. And so ways that we use plain language to make sure that like we know it's not just helpful for people with disabilities. We know that like people who have trauma, the things that they understand are going to be different. So if you're dealing with trauma and you're like dissociating, someone going into a long conversation and using acronyms and using language that's more academic is really doing a disservice to your survivors. So we wanted to make sure that we were paying attention to those kinds of things, not just in our materials for survivors with disabilities, but also like in the other work that we do. Because we know that we have a history of doing that in the rape crisis movement, is making language inaccessible. And it's not helping the people that we want to help. And it's really making our movement exclusive when we want it to be inclusive.
I'm glad that you recognize this through, or I'm sure in prior projects, but certainly how it's applicable to this one. I think one of your earlier statements about mandated reporting not necessarily being used as intended. You know, we often as ombudsmen receive mandated reports of abuse of all kinds, because their mandated reporters are obligated by law to send these reports to us. They're not necessarily asking for our assistance, and what is the role of the program receiving these reports? And does that, you know, align with providing services as well, or just awareness and, like you were saying, stopping the situation from happening? So I just wanted to speak a little bit to ombudsman, as we have actually in this last year tried to turn the ship a little bit where we're less form driven. And when we do receive these forms, we are going to the resident and saying, hey, we did receive this form, which you actually made me think we should probably work on our plain language. And you know, we base our services on trust, and we let them know that we won't release any additional information to any further parties without their consent. But by us receiving this, we probably, you know, risk triggering someone that has already had their trust broken. And certainly working on our introduction of, you know, something beyond, hey, I received this report of abuse, you know, how, looking at how we present that information to the person.
Yeah, and we actually talk about that in our training too, how like we've talked to Adult Protective Services and ombuds people, and they've told us like, you don't want to send that report to the conservator, you don't want to send that report to additional parties because they might be already privy to this knowledge, and they might be one of the people who is responsible for the abuse. They may be aware of the abuse and allowing it to happen. So, you know, in my time with working in direct support, I know that people are quick to include conservators because like that's what's expected, and you don't want to rock the boat when it comes to your legal responsibilities. But like that's something that we have to be careful of, is making sure that um we're acting in a way that fulfills our legal obligations but still um tries to maintain the trust that you have with that person.
Balance. Yeah.
Any other questions before we? And again, my info is in the chat, so if you have any questions or you want me to send you any of the promotional stuff, please feel free. I've sent it out to as many of the disability support organizations and companies that I have personal contacts with, but please feel free. It can always reach more people. I think right now we have about 90 people signed up, which is good, but always love a bigger audience.
I'm wondering too, and I look to you, Tyler and Mark, if it is acceptable for maybe us to get some of those pieces of collateral through Silence Equals Violence, and then as part of our recap of today's meeting, include some of those materials. Is that something we can at least talk about or visit? I would love to distribute that information like as far and as wide as possible. And if they're appropriate for dissemination, I would love to see. Here I go again. Collateral dissemination. I'm telling you, I could never write a short story like ever again. My creativity has gone out the window, but I can talk to bureaucracy.
Yeah, I'll send it out. Priscilla, I have some of that information too. But I will send it out tomorrow to our kind of internal crew here, along with just our like legislative priorities and other Medicaid events too that I'll briefly touch on tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. And if you got my email, my reminder email about this, then you'll get that as well. And if you want to be included, I know there's some new faces here on our emails that I send out. Just shoot me an email or drop your email in the chat, and I'll add you to that list as well. So. Yeah.
Final thoughts or questions for Priscilla? Well, once again, pulling energy from you, Priscilla, in your project, because it is fantastic when we can support each other. And I think that not only with the, you know, plain language piece of that mandated reporting, and also reminding us all about the trust and the trauma-informed care. I mean, certainly something that's always a good reminder. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing more information. I believe that actually takes us to you, Tyler, and I think I forgot to introduce you earlier, so I apologize for skipping over.
No worries. I'm just going to talk very briefly. Real quick, obviously, most of you guys are aware of the Medicaid, Medi-Cal cuts coming, potential cuts coming, the $880 billion that everyone's talking about. I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about, sorry, my camera keeps glitching. I'm going to share my screen real quick, talking about, this was in our Monday Morning Memo article, but next week's the Disability Week of Action. So we have, not we as in ARC of California, but a lot of organizations have kind of taken upon themselves to do various rallies throughout the state because of the cuts that so much of us here have family members or clientele that rely on Medi-Cal in California, IHSS, regional center services. And so I just wanted to share a few, if you guys are in these areas, I'll be at some of them. I'm down in San Diego, but if you guys are or happen to be in these areas and want to spread the word, there's some in Palm Desert, a lot of SoCal, some Central California rallies as well, Bakersfield, Fresno, Modesto, a little north of that. And these are all rallies being planned. One of the bigger questions that we've got is registration. There is no registration for any of these rallies. People just show up, right? You guys have all been involved in a lot of rallies, I'm sure, before, events in certain areas. But these are just a lot at the Republican's office in these various areas. So, like I said, one big question that we've got a lot of is registration. But once again, there is no registration for these. You'll just show up and join hopefully hundreds of advocates, professionals, DSPs in these areas. And so we're really trying to spread the word. I'll also include this in my email tomorrow, along with Priscilla's information in the event next week they have on the 24th. But if you are in these areas, I would highly recommend going, showing support for the potential cuts to Medi-Cal. And then I'm also going to share real quick. If anyone was at, Priscilla, I see your hand. Just one sec. Or do you have a question real quick? Oh. If anyone was at our event, Disco at the Capitol, the ARC of California, Easter Seals, and the UCP collaboration put on an event 2 weeks ago at the Capitol regarding the potential cuts as well. And one of which I'll share now, and this is kind of our call to action. And so I just wanted to share this because it pairs nicely with those rallies going on. But again, as many of you know, the Congress is debating the cuts to Medicaid, which provide services to, I mean, the numbers vary, but about 500,000 Californians with disabilities throughout California. And these services are a lifeline to all of them. Like I said, IHSS, supported employment programs, all regional center programs, long-term care, nursing facilities, you name it. So many of you are probably pretty familiar with all of this that's going on, but I just wanted to share this as well. This is something that we went around to the legislative offices 2 weeks ago in California, and then there was a national conference as well that went really well last week that had some really great feedback in meetings with legislators to kind of protect our population that we work with on the daily basis. So I will include this in our wrap up, nothing major on it because I figured most of you are pretty familiar with the potential cuts and all of the ever-changing language that keeps coming out. Yeah, if you guys have questions about this, feel free to reach out. If you guys have any events in your area as well that you would like to share, we can include those on our Monday morning memo as well that goes out every Monday to about 25,000, 30,000 people in California. And so we're really trying to push this, especially next week while they're on recess. Is that this week? I think it's next week. And that's why all these rallies are planned. So yeah, that's all I got. If you guys have any questions about that, feel free to ask. But again, these are huge potential cuts to a lot of the individuals that we work with on a daily basis. And so I was just on a call earlier with our public policy committee. I know Greg's on here too. But there's definitely, we're hoping things go in the right direction. But again, it's very hard to predict at this time. So yeah, that's all I got. Eden, I don't know if you want to ask if anyone else has anything from their organizations to share that kind of relate to
We're
this.
actually going to do that. We're
Yeah.
running even more ahead of schedule than we originally thought we were going to. Is there anything, for one, I definitely, before we end the call, I want to make sure that we're hearing your ideas about what kinds of presentations and pieces would you like this network to focus on in the coming meetings. We still want to make it relevant and valuable for you. And there is so much going on that it's been difficult for us to kind of focus ourselves and figure out, you know, what to include and what not to include on the agenda. So I definitely want to pick your brains about that. But before we get to that, what else are you folks doing out there? Like what type of activism or projects or initiatives are you participating in or leading?
The center is working under the a contract, basically something for folks to learn about with supported decision making. And there is a conference that we're planning right now with CSU East Bay. We're just going to team up with them, and that'll be on October 25th. So we should be sending the save the date out very soon. And we're just getting all that together, but it will be in Oakland at Laney College. And so I'm helping prepare a lot for that in particular, and then just keeping track of this particular grant. But, you know, Teresa's always very busy. They've already started filming with Joey Travolta. We're going to have some film for folks to watch to help them understand. And we're meeting with financial and legal sectors and coming out with a brochure that will help them understand what exactly it is. And what else? Ability Central is another grant we've been working a lot on. Teresa would have to comment on that. But I mean, there is a lot more. It's just Teresa would be able to flow better on that.
Yeah, no, you guys are all in the housing one that you guys had. I heard that that recent one was a big success as well. So
yeah. So we're gonna continue to create as many reports as possible.
Nice.
Amazing.
I do appreciate the films that are coming out too, just to raise awareness in a different learning style. I feel like they have impact, you know, which I super appreciate because I know reading is not necessarily at the top of everyone's to-do list, but it certainly can be digestible through film. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, the brochure that we're coming out with, we're like my partner and I, or Dave Manson, our director of outreach and engagement, he and I worked on it to bring it to layman's terms, so easier for folks to understand. And then we'll have a place on our website for folks to go as well. So
Very good.
Well, as you're percolating on the ideas, I know we're all busy and it's hard to, again, just come up with the work that we are doing for today's meeting. But I do want to open the conversation up to other topics. I know we've touched on supportive decision making, and we've also touched on the criminal justice system. You know, what are other things that are of interest and relevant to the work that you're doing that we can support through presentations and communications?
I think we had a question or
Oh,
answer, if
I
they
thought-
wanted to share what they were doing.
Yes, hi. Yeah, just an
Hi,
update.
Esther. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. An update with the Department of Developmental Services. So we are proposing updates to the regulations, Title 17 regs for special incident reporting, and that's to incorporate some definitions and expand reporting and provide clarifications to the regional centers to get that consistent reporting. And we went through a 45-day comment period, and then we're currently in a 15-day comment period because there was some modification to text. And so what I'll go ahead and do is I'll drop the link to the department's website that kind of provides the overview of what I've just mentioned. Thanks.
I do want to say too, for the next meeting, the director of DOR too, Kim, will be joining us. I know it is Juneteenth for the June meeting, but on June 19th, she will be joining us to talk about the DOR side of things. So that should be something to keep your eyes out on that one when we send it out. That's my
Yeah.
plug.
Well, we're gonna keep asking this question because we do want to stay, like I said, we want to stay as a resource, really, for each other. And so we certainly will continue as the planning committee to keep bringing you kind of what we feel is the latest, greatest headlines, pull from our attendees to present on topics that we know you're actively involved in. But certainly you can drop any one of us an email or a chat through Teams if you do have some thoughts or ideas that come to you in between our meetings. With that, as Tyler mentioned, our next scheduled meeting is June 19th from 1 to 3. So we'll go back to our regularly scheduled time slot and length. We'll send out probably some minutes or notes about today's meeting with some brochures from Valor. And we look forward to seeing you in a month, 2 months, I guess it is. Middle of summer. It'll be hot. Mark, did you
Yes.
want to say something?
Just thank you, everybody, for being here, and especially with the times we're in now where we're all tense and we check what's going on a daily basis. It's a roller coaster ride, but it's one of the thoughts that we had when we were talking about this meeting is to see if people were interested in just at the next time, sort of talking about what we're all doing to take care of ourselves in a way because of how we work, where we work, and is that something of interest to people? No? Well, quiet today. It's dealing with the stress, I guess, is the bottom line. Okay,
I
well,
mean, I think we at the center would be interested. Oh, by the way, I just put a link to our supported decision-making page on our website. Doesn't have everything yet, but it's a start. And then Dave will be building that out more. So I put that in the chat.
excellent.
Well, with that, I will conclude the meeting. Thank you again for showing up today. Certainly all your contributions just make us a better advocacy hub. So I appreciate it. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy your weekend. Try not to read all the headlines. Just maybe find the good one.
I know, that's the hard part.
That's right. And I look forward to seeing you all in June and
Definitely.
hopefully before. So take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.